I think I need to adjust just a little bit. All right, yes. It's time, almost time. Hello, hello, hello. Just a minute or so left until we get started. I can't wait to share talking about choice today. Hi, Margaret Sturgis. I'm glad you jumped on. Yay! Yeah, we're just getting settled here. I'm so excited to start sharing about this topic tonight, so I'm glad you're joining. Oh, Pat, I'm so glad you're here. Yay! Welcome. This is exciting. I haven't seen you in a while. This is great. I'm glad you're here. Sylvia, yay! Glad you're here, Sylvia. Glad you're here. Awesome. This is so fun. Tonight we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, because I've fought it for a while. So as always, hi Shawan, hi Barbara, glad you're here. As always, folks, I'm bringing you something today that I've been struggling with for most of my life, and I haven't gotten it conquered, but at least it's getting better. So I'm going to share with you about choice. Chris, glad you're here. Love it. Yay! Oh, this is so exciting. I love everybody jumping on. Emma, it has been a long time. So glad you're here. Thank you for jumping on. Welcome, everybody, to Sunday Night Live. It is me, Shannon LaBruyere, and I am live and loving it tonight. So excited to have you here with me. We'll wait just a minute for a couple other folks to jump on. I know a friend of mine named Paul was wanting to tune in, and so this will be his first time ever viewing a Facebook Live, so it might take him a minute to pop on. Brian, it is awesome to see you. Thank you so much. Brian, tonight I'm going to reference a person that is near and dear to your heart, or maybe not, but you'll definitely recognize it when I tell the story. Tonight we're going to be talking about choice. And I was thinking about it because now I have a toddler in my life, a couple of them actually. I have grandchildren that are 3 and 4, and these little ladies are all about choice, all about choice. They want to choose everything, including what they wear, what they have for lunch, where they sit in the car, you name it, they want to choose. And I was thinking about what a difference there is between a toddler who just cannot choose enough. You cannot give them enough options. They always want more choice. To what often happens to us as adults, where we start to feel like we don't have any choices at all. We start to resent the choices that we get. And something in that transformation is not good. I love the way these toddler girls that are in my family respond to their options and how they are more than happy to jump in and make a choice. Bobby, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you joined us. All right, so let's get started on tonight's Sunday Night Live. It is Sunday, June 2nd. It is 7:03 p.m. and it is time to lean in and learn. So let's go. All right, we're talking about choice. And the first thing that I want to establish, and I don't think this will come as a surprise to any of you, is that change happens. Change happens. And we don't always get to choose the change. So when we're talking about choice, one thing that we have to come to grips with, and it falls under the category of respect the now, it is what it is we don't always get to choose the change that comes at us. Carol, I'm glad you're here. We're just getting started. So change happens, but we don't always get to choose the change. But we always have a choice. Always. Always, always, always. We always have a choice, no matter what change is happening to us. If it's a company that's closing, if we've been relocated, if we've got a health issue, if our husband is leaving us and getting a divorce, we still always have a choice. Ah, Michelle, it is awesome to see you. Michelle Burkhart is my coach. So welcome, coach, friend. Mwah! Good to have you here. So we're talking about choices. We're talking about change happens, and we don't always get to choose the change, but we still always have a choice. So I want to take you back a few years. I'm going to say it's about 30 years to when I first started working at the Postal Service, and I was working an afternoon shift, and I worked from 2:30 in the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night. 2:30 to 11 o'clock at night. And then I would go home and I would go to sleep and I would wrangle my baby son and we'd figure it out. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep. Didn't always feel great. And one night I was working in the processing plant. I was canceling mail, letters with stamps in the corner, and I was canceling them. They were lumpy. I had to cancel them by hand. And they called overtime. And I felt terrible. I felt sick. I was really tired, felt like I had a fever. I just could not do it. And so I went to the manager and I said, Charlene, I cannot stay tonight for overtime. I feel sick and I'm going to go home. And she said to me, you can't go home. It's like, what? She said, you can't go home. We called overtime. You have to stay. Like, what? You can't go home. Well, folks, there's a little bit of a toddler in me. And so I pushed back and I said, I can go home. I will go home. And you cannot stop me from going home because I am not a prisoner. I choose to go home. And I punched out and I went home and I recovered. I made a choice. She couldn't take my choice away from me. She couldn't make me stay. I could choose. Now, there were other people who probably were coming down the same flu bug I had. They didn't want to stay either, but they chose to believe what she said. You can't go home, but you can go home. This is the thing. We always have a choice, but we cannot be free from the consequences. We're free to choose, but we're not free from the consequences of our choice. And that's something that scares us. So the first thing I want you to remember is we always have a choice, but we are not always free from the consequences of our choice. It's just how it goes. So we can be wise. We can make choices that have better consequences, but at the end of the day, the choices we make will have consequences. And this is why we come to item number 2. We often refuse to choose. We often refuse to choose, even when we have choices, even when some of them are good choices. We often refuse to make one. How many of you have gone to a restaurant and spent more time trying to select what item you want on the menu than you did actually eating it once you picked? I have done that. I have wasted 2 hours with a bunch of my friends trying to decide where were we going to go for dinner because nobody wanted to just make a choice. And if anybody would have made a choice, we would have all been thrilled because that meant we weren't going to be sitting there in the living room talking about it. We would actually be somewhere eating, right? But we, as we get older, start not wanting to choose because we are afraid of the consequences. We're afraid of the consequences. Lee, I'm glad you're here. Welcome and thanks for joining. So we often refuse to choose because we're afraid of the consequences. We don't want to be responsible. Who do we blame if we made the choice, right? All right, this is the thing. When we refuse to choose, we're choosing. By refusing to choose, you choose. I'm telling you, we always have choices. Even not choosing is a choice, right? So if you're choosing anyway, think about it like this. If I'm choosing anyway, why wouldn't I want to choose something, anything that seems even a little bit better than the alternative? Just a little bit. Because this is what happens. When we choose, we change the outcome. By choosing, we change the outcome. When we refuse to choose, we are living our life by default. And I don't know about you, but there is nobody on this planet who has better plans for me than I have for me. I know best. And I want you to know you can trust yourself to choose. You can trust yourself to choose. Some of the choices that we agonize over are, in the scheme of our lives, so minor, and yet we just don't do it. I can always tell when Giselle pops on because I get a million hearts and I love them. It makes me smile. Hello, Giselle, and welcome. So, refusing to choose can sometimes feel safe. It feels like if I'm not the one making the decision, then I'm not going to be held responsible for it. But the problem with that is you might not be held responsible for it, but you will suffer the consequences of it. You'll suffer the consequences of someone else's choice. That is not active. That's not action. Leaders, people who lead their lives, people who lead themselves, they're self-led, people who lead others take action and they make choices. And so what I want you to remember is this. The longer you postpone choosing, the fewer options you have. And the fewer options you have, the more likely it is that somebody else is going to be choosing for you. I was very involved with the closing of a processing plant, very involved. And at the beginning of the process, everybody in the plant knew this plant is closing. We're asking you to go to another location to work. Everybody will still have a job, but you're going to have a different job in a different location. And so you'll still get a paycheck. All of your bills will be paid. As long as you were paying them before. You'll still get the same paycheck that you always got. How's that? Can't promise they were paying their bills. But what we communicated to the employees was this. You'll still get a paycheck if you want one. There is a job for you if you want to go. And these are all your options. And so there were some people who right away, bam, as soon as they knew the change was happening, they jumped ahead and said, okay, what are my options? And they started picking, okay, I want this one. And if I can't have that, I want this one. And if I can't have that, I want this one. And they chose, and they submitted they submitted the paperwork they needed. They made a choice. There were a lot of other people who didn't want to move. And I don't mean move physically. I mean, they didn't want to move their job. They didn't want to move their location. They didn't want to do something different. They didn't want to go somewhere else. And so because they hated the change, they fooled themselves into thinking that they weren't going to have to choose. Just because you hate the change doesn't mean that you still don't have to make a choice. Okay? So I don't know what you're up against. I don't know what you're trying to decide right now. But I want you to know this, even if it's a change that you hate, you still need to make a choice, even if it's not your favorite. Because when we wait to make those choices, when we resent the change and we dig in and we're not going to pick because we don't like what's going on and we don't pick an option, other people start making our choices for us. And what happened was there were some very nice people, very hardworking people, highly qualified people who ended up, because they refused to choose, they ended up in a place where they had no options. There was nothing left. And so they were forced to take a job, working awful hours, working midnights, having to work on weekends, things that were very difficult for their families. If they had chosen early, even though they didn't like the change, they would have preserved some options. All right, so even if it's a change we hate, we still need to make choices regarding that change. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's a change that you wanted or a change that you didn't. We're still responsible to make the choices for ourselves, or else we are going to be left with junk. And I don't want you to be in that place. I don't think that you want to be in that place. If you did, you wouldn't be here. I know you wouldn't be listening to this if you wanted to be the one who let the whole world make all of your choices for you. I'm just talking a little bit about some things that cause us to get stuck and how we can change our perspective so that we are able to get past it and move on. Not choosing is a choice, all right? Even if you don't like the change, make a choice. This is something I want to point out. Sometimes we think that our choices are limited to A and B. We just get used to that. We get used to, well, it's either black or white. Well, it's either the right or the left. Sometimes there are a lot of options in the middle. When we resent a change, we don't often see the full spectrum of the choices that are available to us. So I want you to think about a change that you're in, a change that you're not liking, a change that you wish wasn't happening, something that is really bugging you. And I want you to think about the extremes. Just what is the most crazy thing you could do? I'm going to use my job as an example because I had a job I loved, and as I've shared on Sunday Night Live many a time, I had a job I loved, doing something I loved, and it went away. And I was left with having to make choices out of a very limited field about a change that I hated. And so I was thinking that my choices were this. Well, I'm either going to have to pick this job or this job. I'm going to have to go to this post office or work at this facility. My choices were just either or, until one day it finally occurred to me, wait a minute, I don't have to stay here at all. Now all of a sudden, the choices are limitless. I could go work there. I could go work here. I could work for myself. I could start my own company. Once I started realizing, ooh, there are more options, oh my gosh, the changes that were available, or the choices that were available to me, were far more exciting. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to take them, but you can look at the choices you have and put your brain into a gear that says, okay, so what are just crazy things that I'd never do? I was working with a client earlier this week, and Shay, I saw you popped on, and Paul Kowalski, I'm glad you figured it out and you're here. Awesome! And hi, dude, I'm glad you're here. All right, so I was working with a client earlier this week, and she was thinking she had no options at all. She needs privacy. She goes, I don't know where I'm going to get privacy. There's nowhere. My house is filled. I just have nowhere to go. And so we got the whiteboard and the marker out and said, let's brainstorm. Where can you get privacy? And so the first thing she said was the bathroom, and rolled her eyes. Well, you can get privacy in the bathroom. You can get privacy in the cellar. You can get privacy in a phone booth if you can find one. And we just started brainstorming. Where can you get privacy? And after we had this list, we had a good chuckle about it, but she was able to see, ooh, I do have some options. So if you're stuck in a place where you feel like you have to make a choice about a change you don't like, give yourself permission to think of some crazy stuff and write it down. You can always cross it off. This is news to me because for years I didn't write things down because I thought that's ridiculous. And now I realize just because I'm writing an idea down doesn't mean I have to do anything with it, right? Shay, I love what you said. There are endless opportunities, and we limit ourselves to this or that. We really do. There are so many other options. And if you can't get your brain running towards some of the crazy stuff, get with a friend and say, okay, what are some of the alternatives? What else could I do here? What else could I do? This relationship is going nowhere. This is a terrible relationship. It's going nowhere. My boyfriend isn't going anyplace. He's not wanting to marry me. I want to get married. I don't have any option but to stick around and just wait for him. Well, your friend might have more advice for you, right? So get a trusted friend, a wise friend. Ask them to help you brainstorm some things that you can do that might seem crazy. You can cross them off the list if you don't want. But when we're faced with change that we hate, we need to remind ourselves that not choosing is choosing. And we need to look for our options so that we can make a choice that's going to be the best for us. All right. So the next thing, and Angie, I'm so glad to have you here. The next thing I want you to know is the act of choosing sets me up for more and better. Choosing is a muscle. And the more we choose, the better we get at choosing, the stronger we get at choosing. The more we practice exercising our choices, whether they are endless or limited, the better we get at exercising our ability to choose, the more successful we are going to be. And this is why. Every time we choose, we demonstrate our power. I am a powerful woman. You are a powerful man. You are a powerful person. But you'll forget that. I'll forget that if I don't exercise my ability to make choices. Because people who don't choose are victims. Circumstances impact us when we fail to choose. Somebody else's agenda drives our lives when we fail to choose. And so the act of choosing sets us up for a better future. It reinforces our agency, that we are our own person and that we can make decisions that affect our future, the future of our family, and this is a good thing. This is a good thing. You don't have to be afraid of that when you've practiced choosing, because when you practice choosing, you get better at it. Practice choosing at that restaurant. Instead of going and spending 20 minutes looking at a menu, go in and tell yourself, I'm going to choose what I'm going to eat 5 minutes. I'm going to choose. I'm going to pick. I'm not going to ask the waitress to tell me what to get. I'm not going to allow my friend or my husband to pick for me. I am going to pick. Start exercising your ability to choose, because the more you choose, the more powerful you are. And that powerful feeling feeds so much about where you're headed in life. That ability to know we are powerful is what allows us to say, I'm going to accomplish great things. I'm going to have massive impact. I'm going to change the lives of the people that I'm trying to serve. We need to be powerful to do that, and choosing helps us exercise our power. We are wired to have agency. As humans, we are wired to make decisions, but we get programmed over time to give that choice away. Sometimes it's in the relationships that we have, and we let someone else make all the decisions, and we abdicate the throne, so to speak. We say we don't want to make any choices. I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to be an active part. I'm encouraging you, if you're that person, start making choices, even if they're small ones, but do it, and do it consistently, because you need to start exercising your ability to choose well, because it is going to help you to be more powerful and have better impact. And that's what we want as people. That's what we all want. We want to have an impact on this world. I don't want to leave it and not leave a blip. I don't want to have a little tiny pinprick in the sand. Yep, that was Shannon's life. I want a huge impact. I want a crater where I was at, man. I want it to be powerful. We are born wanting to make those choices. And think about the toddlers in your life. And I talk about Bria and Liliana in this case a lot. Bria was over to my house not too long ago. My granddaughter, she is 3. And if you were to say to Bria, what do you want for lunch? Bria would immediately tell you, as she told me, jelly beans. She'd seen them in the pantry. She wanted to have jelly beans. It was one of these giant 5-pound jugs of sugar deliciousness from one of the warehouse stores, and she'd spotted it in there. And when I said, Bria, what do you want for lunch? She knew exactly what it was. She wanted jelly beans. She chose. Now, I'm her Seema. I'm her grandma. I can't let her have jelly beans. So I rephrased the question. Okay, Bria, would you like to have chicken soup or cereal? You can have chicken soup or cereal. So I narrowed her options because I was being wise, right? I'm the wise Seema. But she still was able to make a choice. She wanted soup. Way to go. We want choices. Even when we're 3 years old, we want to pick. Bria's mom, oh, hi, Dawn, I'm glad you're here. Bria's mom is my daughter, Olivia. And Olivia, at a very early age, wanted to choose what she wore. And so I learned that I could try to make her wear something, but it wasn't going to go well for either of us. It's kind of like trying to make a toddler eat. If they don't want to, they don't open their mouth and chew. I figured it out. I can't make them eat. And I decided that I didn't mind Olivia being able to choose what she wore. So I gave her parameters. Just here, you know what? It has to, if we're going to church, it has to be appropriate for church. So I didn't want her to wear pajamas to church. I didn't want her to wear a Halloween costume to church, but she had a nice broad area there because I wanted her to get good at choosing. I wanted her to practice making a choice, making a decision, and then seeing if it worked and getting that feedback that happens when you make a choice. If we start that, even if we're old, I don't want to say old, even if we're adults, we can start making choices and seeing what happens when we do, and it'll help us to adjust. We're wired to do that. There are people in your life, like the manager I worked with. She meant well. She wasn't a bad person. She really thought that she could tell me that I was not allowed to go home. But I was allowed to go home. I just wasn't allowed to go home without consequences. And I counted the cost. I chose. You can choose as well. And if you'll keep those things in mind, that not choosing is the same as choosing, right? Not choosing is choosing. That we're wired to choose. So start exercising it if you haven't made choices in a while. You know, we go to school and they assign us seats, right? And then we get out of school and we go get a job and they tell us stand over there and do this and do it exactly like that. And I'll come back and check to make sure it looks just like I told you. We get out of the habit of making choices. But the more choices we make, the better we get at it and the more fingerprints that we'll have on our futures. So, have you ever had a kid say to you, I'll do it because I want to, not because you told me to? Thumbs up from the parents who have heard that from one of their kids. I'll do it because I want to, not because you told me to. Well, when you hear that phrase, instead of getting angry about it, say to yourself, good, they're choosing to do the right thing. Yeah. The advice I'm giving them, they're choosing to take it. Nobody likes to feel forced. When we have those changes that come into our lives that we didn't want, that we have to deal with, it's no fun. I'm thinking about when we take a blow to our health. We're sick, or someone we love is sick, and we have to deal with that. That's a whole range of choices we don't want to have to make. And some people never make any choices regarding that, and so their health goes downhill. They never choose to go to the doctor to get it checked out. You know people like this. They never choose to follow up on that test result that wasn't so good. They choose not to choose. But when we do that, we're choosing, right? Sometimes our choices are very, very limited. How about when someone dies? Someone we love, we would have never wanted them to leave, and they're gone. And that's hard. It's awful. It's a change that we hate. We didn't want it. It brings us grief and sadness. Hey, Donna, I'm glad you're here. Those kind of changes, we still have choices. It might not feel like it. Like I said at the beginning, we don't always get to choose the change, but we can choose a lot of other things and how we react to the change. And sometimes the only choice we have is the attitude that we're going to display while we go through the change. So, if the only choice you have, only option you have is how you look at the change you're in, I want to encourage you to choose the option that allows you to learn and grow, that allows you to see beauty, that allows you to help someone else. Those are powerful choices. Those are choices that allow us to have power in the midst of things that we don't want, that we didn't ask for, and that we can't make go away. We can choose to be positive, not clueless, but we could choose to find the beauty, right? We can choose to respect what's happening, acknowledge it for what it is, and then we can choose to start looking for the beauty in the midst of it. I've shared this before. I'll share it again. Maybe you haven't heard it. I love this advice from Mr. Rogers. When something bad's happening, when change is happening that's negative, that's hard, look for the helpers. If it's so vast and so difficult and so awful that you can barely stand to look at whatever that thing is that's gripping you, that loss, look for the helpers. Look for the people in the midst of it that are working to choose to make a difference. And that is going to encourage your soul. That's a choice you can make. That's a choice we can make. We are powerful. You are powerful. I want you to choose. Choose to choose, because choosing to not choose is a choice. It's true. You guys are awesome. I am so glad to see such a great group here. It's awesome. Deanna, I'm glad you popped on. Yay! Deanna just posted some great wisdom on Facebook, and I reposted it. So since you guys are seeing me live, you'll be able to go to my page, or not. It's not on my page. It's on my personal in the personal section, not on my Support Life page. So go and check it out. And it's a little bit of an interesting take on Lord, grant me the wisdom to, you know, that song, the Serenity Prayer. It's a much better version. I loved it. And Deanna shared it. So thank you, Deanna, for jumping on. You guys, if you have comments, what changes are you going through? Or what was the thing you learned about choosing when you were going through a big change? I would love to know that. That stuff feeds my soul, and it helps me to, it gives me food for thought, and it really does help me to fine tune how I look at things. And I know that it helps the other people who check out the videos, even if they don't see them live, and the ones who go and just cruise through the comments. So share your story. I would love to hear it. What change are you going through? And what is your outlook on it? What choices do you get to make? I'd love to hear it. You guys are awesome. I am so glad you joined me for Sunday Night Live, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, same time, same place, and I wish you all the best. Thank you, and have a great week. Bye-bye.